So as you guys can see, we started off with a very, very basic interpretation of building out of the back. So using our 2-3-2 formation, playing from a winger to a center back who has the option of playing the center mid or the other center back, and finding the far side winger to move forward and attack. So very, very basic, not skipping players, just really, really focusing heavily for about a month and a half or so on coordinating the movement, on the whole team shifting together, receiving across their body, trying to hit their teammates' far foot, and then on everyone moving forward at the same speed. The phrase I've been using with the little kids is game speed, same speed. So moving at game speed, but all staying together to move up and attack together. So very, very basic to start with, and we worked on that for about a month and a half or so, like I said. So the next video I'll show introduces a little bit of a variation into it. If you watch the very, very, very tail end of that last video, you can hear me talking a little bit about not trying to smash our way through. So if we find our far side winger and he still isn't able to dribble forward easily, he still isn't able to dribble forward into space, it's totally okay, and I actively encourage my team to pull the ball back, play a simple pass back to our defenders, and continue to circulate the ball until we can find a good opportunity to go forward, until we can find an easier opportunity to attack. So what I mean by that is we can find someone under relatively little pressure who can move us forward so that we can go attack. So we can find one of our midfielders on the ball facing forward with a little bit of time and space to breathe, a little bit of time and space to take up a more attacking position, to maybe play another pass forward or at least move us forward with the ball by dribbling. So this next video that I'll show you guys is going to be on us working on that specific tweak. So the winger's pulling the ball back and finding a simpler pass. So when looking to introduce variety to a tactical pattern, whether it's in this scenario building out of the back or an attacking pattern, even defensive choreography or set piece choreography, the reason to introduce variety, I believe, is to give yourself more options, to give yourself more solutions during a game. So the reason I introduced this particular tweak with my team is because in our game last weekend, the problem we ran into pretty consistently was our midfielders dribbling into pressure. So trying to either smash their way past a defender or trying to dribble around players that they weren't able to beat consistently. So for me, again, I always want to try and use training to engineer outcomes that I want to see in games. And so the outcome I was seeing in games was not satisfactory, so something had to change. And again, especially at this age, the players need that. It's acceptable for an 8 or a 9-year-old to try and smash their way through. They haven't been taught the right way to play yet. They haven't been taught my way to play yet. So the fact that we need to introduce a little bit more variety is a totally natural and a totally expected process. So I'll show a quick clip of what the training session looked like. So for this little bit of choreography, we're only working with the goalkeeper and then the 2 defenders and 3 midfielders. But I talked to the forwards about their positional responsibilities during all this, so I want them staying directly in between the center mid and the winger, so forming a little triangle with them. Super, super concise and clear explanation of where they should be. So it starts out with the center mid dribbling wide. The whole team will shift that direction with the winger making sure that he's backpedaling, so that way he can see the whole play happening. So again, rather than trying to force our way through, that flag represents a defender. We'll pull it back. The whole team has to drop back with the ball, and then we'll try and shift it to the other side. So you'll notice a breakdown right here. The center back passed to the other center back, and you can see the reason I didn't want that happening is because the ball is moving so slow. I'd rather have more short passes, so the ball moves a little bit quicker, and if we lose it, there's more players in the space where we lost it to regain it. So we restarted that sequence. Again, because in training I want it looking like it'll look in a game, and that wouldn't be acceptable in a game. So the sequence happens again, goes a little bit better this time. You can see the whole team backpedaling to create space for that back pass. And again, we try and move the opposition, we try and move the ball to the far side. And watch how the winger dribbles. So there was a couple corrections to make on this one. The first one, you can see me looking at the far side of the field. Our far side winger was not staying with the play. He was a little bit behind the play, which means in a defensive transition, he could be keeping forwards on, and he also wouldn't be in a very good defensive position to protect the goal. And now I'm off the screen right now, working with the winger who had the ball, the winger who dribbled forward. He dribbled towards the middle of the field, and with our wingers, when we're building like this, I want them receiving the ball all the way wide, all the way near the sideline, and dribbling all the way near the sideline. So the opposing team has to cover as much of the field as possible. So correcting a couple mistakes in one play from the far side winger and the near side winger. So this sequence was a little bit cleaner, and you won't be able to see the far side winger tucking in and staying with the team quite as well. But this time, watch the left winger. Watch how he dribbles. Watch how wide he stays this time. So he's looking, he's backpedaling, receiving all the way wide, and this time he stays wide. So he's all the way at the very edge of the screen. So I really can't stress this enough. The reason that we added this variation to this tactical pattern, the reason we added this variation to the way that we want to build out of the back is a direct response to what has been happening in our games. End of story. So using that as the starting point, using what's happening in games as the starting point, I guess a question you could ask is, okay, Ian, you said that you try and build from your defenders to your mids, and you try and find a midfielder that can receive the ball and face forward to either play a pass or dribble forward. But in this video, you only work with the wingers. Why is that? So again, during games, it's typically a little bit easier to find space out wide. There's typically more players in the center. Players are more aware of covering that space. So typically in games, we're not able to find our center mid who can turn and face forward as often as we're able to find our wingers. So in the game, the problem that we had was finding our wingers wide and getting them to recognize when it was the right time to go forward, when they had enough time and space to go forward, and when they needed to pull the ball back. And again, that's not something I'm speculating on or hypothesizing or guessing may or may not happen. This is a direct response to what happened with us in our last couple league games. And so it's not just getting the wingers to recognize that. It's not just getting them to recognize that they didn't have enough space to move forward. It's coordinating their movements, coordinating their actions, coordinating their decisions with the whole team. So again, we've been working on when a midfielder dribbles forward, the whole team has to push forward. Okay, and that's how the sequence starts. We find them, they move forward, the whole team moves forward. That's to keep good spacing. That's so they have options to play the ball to. That's so we can force the opposition into their defensive half. We can force them farther from our goal. That's so that if we lose the ball, we can get numbers around the ball quickly to defend. It's for a variety of reasons. For those same sorts of reasons, for the same to achieve the same sorts of outcomes, if they cannot play forward and they're forced to turn back and maybe take a touch or two backwards or dribble backwards to find another passing option, the whole team has to shift backwards. And not just for that, but it helps them create space in the sense that their spacing will remain the same and the whole team will move together. So just imagine a hypothetical scenario in this case, and again, this is what's been happening in games, so it's really not hypothetical in that sense. But if our winger dribbled forward, didn't have space to attack, they pulled the ball back and dribbled backwards, but our center backs didn't move with them. They'd dribble right into each other. There wouldn't be enough space to play a pass. So if there was a defender chasing the winger, he would be able to pressure our center back very easily. It would be a quick 5, 6, 7 yard sprint and he'd be in his face right away. Whereas if the center back is backpedaling while the winger is dribbling backwards, they'll maintain that same spacing. With this team, it's about 15 yards or so, 18 yards. And so instead of only having to run 6 or 7 yards to pressure, he'll have to run 12, 15, 18 yards to pressure. And by that time, our center back will be able to hopefully find another passing option. So that's the first of those little details that we worked on, is moving not just forward as a team, but moving backwards as a team. So really, besides adding in the winger dribbling forward and then backward and the whole team shifting with him to keep the same spacing, really besides adding that in, the way we work on building out of the back at training has stayed pretty much the same. And what that allows me to do as a coach is keep hammering home the same principles, keep hammering home the same coaching points, and really refining those. So since day one, we've been working on that far side winger who I had to correct, shifting with the play and keeping an even line with the two center backs. That's still being worked on. We've had to work on the winger attacking with the ball, receiving all the way wide and dribbling all the way wide. Again, that was another correction I had to make. So even though we've been working on it for a month and a half, those sorts of details are still being hammered home every day at training. Some other ones that we've still been working on, making sure everyone's communicating where the next pass should go. That started to show some improvement. Making sure everyone's body shape is good so they can see the whole field no matter where we're moving. That's another one. And then one that we've started working on for the last couple weeks has been making sure that the goalkeeper is shifting with everyone. So you'll notice that he's instructed to take up a position in between the two center backs. So sort of keeping a little diamond with the two center backs and the holding mid and the goalkeeper. Again, all these details on where to be, on what sort of spacing we're maintaining, all of those same coaching points are still being hammered home a month and a half into working on building out of the back. So the reason we're still working on so many of those basic details, the reason I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel when working on building out of the back with my team, is because we're still not consistently executing it perfectly in games. So even in this training video, you can see we mess up on the very first repetition with a slow pass. And the wingers still aren't in the right spot. They're still not making the right movements. So until that happens super consistently in training, it won't happen super consistently in games. And until it starts happening consistently in games, I see no reason to introduce any other real variations or introduce any other solutions for the team until we've really perfected, we've really begun to master just the basics. So to get a little bit deeper into the actual coaching aspect, how do you take those ideas in your head and translate them to the players? So as you saw in that first video, we started by shifting without the ball. I had a bunch of cones laid out, and for each position, I actually laid out 3 different cones. So there was a cone they were supposed to stand at when the ball was in the middle of the field. There was a cone they were supposed to stand at when the ball was on the left side of the field, and there was a cone they were supposed to stand at when the ball was on the right side of the field. So giving each player 3 specific cones to move in between, I think made it very easy for them. And we worked on that again and again and again. And with those cones as well, they were all color-coded. I think, for what it's worth, I had blue in the middle, red for when the ball was on the right, and I believe green for when the ball was on the left. And giving them those very specific reference points for players this age, it allows you to transmit your message to them just about instantly. There was still a little bit of confusion, but it was minimal. Now that we've been working on it for a little bit longer, they don't necessarily need their own specific cone. So for example, in this second video, working on the winger pulling it back, they were sharing cones. So everyone had a specific orange cone to stand at when the ball was in the middle of the field, and then besides that, the rest of the cones were sort of fanned out. I'll put a quick image up of what that looks like. So the reason I started by giving each player their own cone was to make it very simple, to make it very clear for them about where they should be moving as the ball moved. But by using a setup more like this, one little benefit is that there's a little bit less clutter on the field, but I also think this helps reinforce the idea of positional play. So it's not just that, okay, I'm the left back, when the ball's here, I stand here, when the ball's there, I stand there. It reinforces the idea that the whole back 5 in this case is moving as one unit. So it's less a case of standing here, here, or here than it is, okay, when the ball's on the right side, I need to make sure this space is covered. When the ball's on the left side, I need to make sure that this space is covered. I think by having the players share cones, it sort of reinforces that idea that we all move together, we all move as a unit to cover certain spaces and to accomplish certain things. So giving your team lots and lots of repetitions working on the same sort of basic variables, I think is very important. One criticism that gets thrown around sometimes doing training in this manner is that the players will get bored of it. That's not really a view I subscribe to, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. But there's other variations we've sort of added in to building out of the back to our choreography. One small one that's been pretty effective for us has been starting from our defensive shape. So when we're attacking, we want about 15, 16, 17, 18 yards in between players. We want our spacing to be more expanded. When we're defending, it's closer to 12 yards or so, 10 or 12 yards. So starting from a more compact shape, and then tossing a ball on and having the whole team working on expanding. That's been one way we've sort of tweaked this and given the players more ideas on how it's supposed to look in a game. Another little variation we've worked on a couple times is starting from a throw-in. So having one of the wingers start with it out wide, out of bounds, starting from a throw-in, and swinging the ball to the other side to attack. Again, tiny bit of variety, but overall, most of the variables, most of the details are the same. And then also, instead of passing in between the center back, or sorry, passing from the center back to the holding mid to the other center back, we've gone the other way around. Like I said, we've been working on the positioning of the goalkeeper. So once or twice, we've gone from the center back to the goalkeeper to the other center back. So for the last month and a half now, just lots and lots and lots of repetition on the basics, shifting together, receiving across your body, playing your teammate across their body, constant awareness, body shape open to the field, all those basics. And another tool I like to utilize when working on some choreography like this for the building out of the back is giving them a chance to do it under pressure in a more realistic scenario, but giving them a chance to still have success with it, especially in training. So one of my favorite exercises to work on is just a simple numbers up scrimmage. So you can see that towards the end of the first video I posted, and you can also see that in my video for attacking choreography, the attacking pattern. Our attacking pattern starts by swinging it from one winger to the other, but having the players go against maybe even one player to start with at this age, or two, having them work on maybe swinging it from one side to the other and then dribbling across a line was sort of the way we got started with all of this. And now we'll do that same sort of numbers up scenario, but going towards goal, but with the stipulation that before we can score, both wingers have to touch the ball. And that can lead to some awkward sequences in practice sometimes, especially since we always work so hard on pressing, on winning the ball high up the field when our forwards win the ball near the goal and they're forced to play a back pass. But for my team to get to where I want them to be, winning the ball and then playing a simple pass is a pretty big part of that. And finding the right time to attack rather than just winning the ball and going directly to goal, 99% of the time we won't win the ball inside the other team's 18, inside their penalty area. So it's really important that they understand that once we win the ball, we need to circulate the ball, we need to disorganize the opponent to find a good situation to attack. So I've found that numbers up scrimmages have been a really, really effective way to introduce the players, to take them from moving the ball around different cones to starting to execute it into a more game-like scenario under pressure. So as you can probably tell by the number of times I'm repeating myself, I'm a big fan of repetition with tactical choreography like this. So to get back to that argument about making sure that the players don't get bored at training, introducing a little bit of variety, I think, helps alleviate some of that. Like I said, starting from a throw-in, starting from a defensive shape, and it allows you to keep getting across your consistent message. So you're tweaking a little bit here and there, so it's not going back to the same set of cones every single day at training. It adds in a little bit of variety without corrupting your overall message too much, without introducing too many new topics, without changing your message. And to talk a little bit more about making sure players don't get bored with certain exercises, one thing I've always struggled to do with my trainings is to have my standards so high that the player, and communicating that to the players so that they understand that just because the ball moved from one side to the other doesn't mean that we did it right, doesn't mean that it's good enough to work in the game. So if your standards are that high and you can communicate that to the players effectively, that yeah, you accomplished the basic gist of the exercise, but you didn't do it in a way that would be effective in a match. If you can communicate that to them, it sort of activates that little piece in their brain that always wants to do a little bit better. And so if you keep striving for perfection, if you keep letting the players know that it can always be a little bit better and this detail or that detail could always be a little bit better, I think that helps alleviate some of the boredom as well. Activating some of that ambition within the players to strive to make themselves better in the within the same exercise rather than sampling a little bit from all over the place. As always, thank you very much for everyone that actually made it all the way through this video. I really, really appreciate that. And please, please, please don't hesitate to hit me back with some feedback either on the website, on Twitter, via email, whatever works for you. So thank you again.